My dissertation as a graduate student was essentially in Wordsworth and Coleridge. And if I had to take one poet who was a model for my poetry, it would be Coleridge's conversation poems. These poems start in a domestic setting, and they were very new in that they would start in a domestic setting. Poems would start either on the top of a mountain or by a river. Coleridge's poems start in the backyard, or he's sitting indoors on a winter night watching a fire, or right around his cottage. And he situates you in his home, and something triggers a memory or an association. And he falls into a kind of reverie and goes on this bit of imaginative travel, and then usually returns to the domestic setting at the end. And his new view of it has been informed by this little travel. A lot of my poems fit into that, fit somewhat into that pattern. Poetry, I think, moves, most art moves kind of in a pendulum, and I think poetry, you can see even from the Greeks, the argument as to whether literature should be in the common tongue or should be in an elevated language. And this pendulistic battle goes back and forth. Wordsworth, for instance, to go back to him, wanted to write poetry, as he said, in the speaking language of men, the way he wanted to get speech back into it. And so did Frost and Ezra Pound also. The idea of bringing poetry in contact with common speech. And the other camp would say that poetry has to be completely different from regular speech, that regular speech is down here and poetry takes place on another linguistic level. Those two voices, or those two opposed positions, I think pretty much throughout the history of English literature at least, have determined these various movements back and forth. And now we seem to be, thanks to a number of poets that came after the high modernism of T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, and you could add Hart Crane and Wallace Stevens, there's been a movement back to the connection between poetry and common speech. Those big modernists really tried to get beyond personality. They wanted to make poetry into something more than the expression of an individual personality. But personality seems to have returned to poetry.